This is KUHT-TV, Channel 8, Houston PBS. Houston PBS, broadcast from the University of Houston, Houston's public Tier 1 university. Viewer supported through the Association for Community Broadcasting.
Bullying doesn't just happen in schools, online, or the playground. It's more prevalent in the workplace than you may think. Nearly half of all Americans report they've been affected by workplace bullying. Find out what you can do to deal with bullies in the workplace. Next on Living Smart. Hello, I'm Patricia Gross. Welcome to Living Smart, the show designed to help you get the most out of life. Craig Clayton Sr. often speaks about diversity, leadership, and management. He's been the director and diversity strategist with the University of Houston's International Institute for Diversity and Cross-Cultural Management since 1999. Over time, one of the subjects he's chosen to tackle is workplace or corporate bullying. What do you do when someone uses either verbal, psychological, physical abuse, or humiliation to get their way? How do you handle this type of harassment? He's here to enlighten us. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And Mr. Clayton, I'd like to start with a definition always. Pamela Ludgen-Sandvik expands the definition of workplace bullying as follows. It is a persistent verbal and nonverbal aggression at work that includes personal attacks, social ostracism, and a multitude of other painful messages and hostile interactions. Now, in your opinion, what is the difference between workplace bullying and harassment? Sounds very similar.
Very much so. There are some distinct differences, though. Harassment, in most cases, is targeted towards individuals based on a category that they may represent. Women may be harassed primarily because of gender. People who speak with an accent may be harassed primarily because, again, of that distinction. However, when it comes to bullying, bullying can be for any number of reasons, but it's normally something the bully has found in the person they're picking on that makes them think either this person is smarter than, more attractive than, more popular than, and it's similar to some of the same reasons people are bullied in schools, only now it happens in the workplace.
Now, let's look at another definition. Gary and Ruth Mamie define workplace bullying as repeated, health-harming mistreatment, verbal abuse, or conduct which is threatening, humiliating, intimidating, or sabotage that interferes with work, or some combination of the three. What are your thoughts about that? Because that's a different type of definition.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as a quick side note, I personally have been bullied. So the examples that you're giving in those definitions are real. There is a physical component relative to the impact of being bullied. There also are impacts around your performance, things that now will affect how you actually do your job as well. So those are absolutely perfect definitions in that context.
How does someone know they're being bullied or harassed? I mean, how do you know?
In most cases, the person being bullied knows it. There are examples of where the person doing the bullying may not be aware of the extent to which that behavior is now being perceived. So there are some instances where the bully knows that they're clearly creating an environment that's not healthy, but they may not know it goes to that extreme. Normally the behaviors, regardless of the definition, are seen as deliberate. They're repeated in most cases. And unfortunately, the target is clearly aware that they're being picked on.
So those are the three rules of definition: deliberate, disrespectful, and repeated.
Yes, ma'am.
That's something that you have to be remembering when you're being bullied.
Yes, and that's going to be at the core of almost any definition that you'll see as well.
Okay. Now, is there a fine line between being like a tough love kind of boss, hard, someone who keeps you accountable, and a bully?
Great
I mean,
question.
how do you define?
And I'll give you the example is that in most cases, and again, I'll specifically talk about the Houston area where we've got a significant amount of oil and gas and production facilities, where in that culture, there are managers who truly do take the tough love approach to managing. Mm-hmm. However, what crosses the line is when it becomes personal. It's one thing for me to ride you every day about some nuance of your job because I don't think you're doing it well enough and giving you feedback on how to improve. Even if I'm over the top in that feedback, right. It's another when now I assail you personally around the reasons that you're not able to accomplish the task. That's where it crosses the line.
Give me an example of that.
It's one thing to say, for an example, that there are skills you may be missing to effectively do the job, and I think you should have those skills, so I'm consistently kind of nudging you along, though
Right.
not necessarily in a kind way.
Right.
That's helping you do your job better.
Okay.
But if there now is a connection to what's not being done and you're not smart enough,
Oh,
or you
okay,
don't have
okay.
the intellect to pull it off,
Okay.
and I make it personal, that's when it crosses the line.
Okay. I would think that businesses would care about this because it affects the bottom line. Can you share with me how it affects the bottom line to have bullies in the workplace?
Absolutely. I'll give you an example. One organization we did an assessment for that had 5,000 employees. In this case, we found over 75% of their employees had encountered bullying behaviors in the last 12 months. On average, 4 incidents per year. We then just asked a series of very logical questions. If you've encountered this, have you lost productive time at work avoiding the person or worrying about the person who committed the behavior? What we found is that on average, 5 hours of lost productivity were cited by the individual, either avoiding or worrying about the person per incident. So you can do the math pretty quickly. If you've got an average of 4 incidents occurring and you're losing 5 hours per incident, that's 20 hours of lost productivity. And 75% of the employees in this organization of 5,000 people have stated they're losing that amount of productivity. For most executives that I've met with, when we come to them and say, here's what the data shows, X% of your people have encountered this, you get the denial. I can't believe we've got that happening. But when you can connect it to now taking compensation and driving what's being lost relative to lost productivity connected to that and say, and you're losing $200 million a year in lost productivity.
That's when they perk up.
They want to stop
I gotta
it.
listen
Exactly
now.
right. Even though in many cases they're the perpetrator of some of those same bullying
Exactly,
behaviors.
exactly. Let's talk about types of bullies because I found this very interesting. The gatekeeper.
Those are the folks that are the ones that assume every employee is stealing. And what they assume you're stealing is time. And those are the folks that literally, if you've got a 15-minute break and you're gone for 16, they're pulling you over to their desk to say, what took you so long on your break? But that's also the same manager that knows you come in a half hour early,
Right.
leave
But
a half hour late,
Right.
and work through your lunch, but they never come over and say, get up from here and go stretch your legs and get out of here for a while.
Right. Constant critic. This is very common, I think, right?
I worked for one of those as well.
Right.
There's nothing you can do that's right. The way you speak is wrong. The way you dress is wrong. The way your hair looks, not that I have to challenge anymore, is wrong. But they're not satisfied with anything, and they are indeed a critic over everything that you do.
The screamers. Now, these are not so acceptable, are they?
Well, you'd be surprised how many times it becomes acceptable depending on who the screamer is. I'll give you an example. Here in Houston, I worked with a company in the petrochemical business. They had one facet of the business that was doing a lot of R&D work, and they had an individual there with multiple PhDs who owned multiple patents that the organization now was reaping financial rewards from. He was also unquestionably a screamer, and everyone knew it. And they turned a blind eye and deaf ear to his behavior because of the value they perceived him to bring. Only no one would work with this man. So after a while, it became nobody's untouchable when they realized people were leaving, including other scientists who just didn't want to work with this person any longer.
Oh boy. Did that ever stop, or he continued screaming?
It did stop
Okay.
once the CEO realized what was happening because it had been kept cocooned in R&D. But when it got back to the CEO that the perception was this person was untouchable to the extent of an individual that can take control, the CEO got out of his chair, went over to the R&D part of the organization in another building, called a meeting and said, no one in this building is untouchable, including me. And this stops today.
And
So
it
if you
did?
think you're untouchable, come see me and we'll help you put a resume together. It stopped.
It stopped.
It
He
stopped.
stopped screaming. Two-headed snake. What is that about?
Those are the folks who say one thing to you, but say something to someone else. And they will make you feel as though they are supportive of your efforts, but in actuality, every opportunity they get, they're tearing down what you do, how you do it, and attempting to pull the rug out from under your feet.
Snoop. The Snoop.
I can think of the individual that comes to mind with an organization in particular. Again, I go back to the production environment, where in this particular setting, this manager would literally spend half of his day watching his employees work from a position that they couldn't see him watching them. And his whole outlook was to see, what are you doing? Are you wasting time? Are you not doing something you should? Would call you into his office and ask you, why did you spend 15 minutes out at building 2 at 10 o'clock this morning?
Oh, boy.
Well, how do you know I was at building 2 at 10 o'clock? Well, he was peeking around the corner taking notes.
Being a snoop.
Being a snoop, exactly.
The ringmaster.
Those are the folks literally that want you to jump through hoops. And they consistently are, in most cases, moving the target. And even if you jump through the hoop and succeed, their outlook on it is, you must have gotten lucky, so I'm going to hold the hoop up again and challenge you to jump another time to see, can you do it again, even though you've already proven that you can.
Oh, boy. Manipulator.
Wow, there's a lot of those out there, unfortunately. Those are the ones that literally will try to find every opportunity they can to take either a project, assignment, or opportunity, create a scenario where you can't succeed, and then will cite back to you the reason for your failure wasn't the scenario, it was your inability to accomplish the task.
Queen syndrome.
The queen bee. That's one that I've gotten into some heated discussions in some organizations about because
I bet.
The queen bee is by default normally a woman in a senior management position who often deems other women in the organization to be in need of help, but her perception on it is, I got here without help. Why should I worry about helping someone else? So as a result, they normally are more confrontational to other women and try to find ways, if at all possible, to belittle them because it unfortunately makes them look good.
Now, how does bullying affect health?
Oh, tremendously. I mean, when I was going through the bullying myself, I could unquestionably tell blood pressure issues were occurring. There were issues that were connected to frustration, anger, short-temperedness. I'd go home as a result of being bullied in the workplace and would now respond to my beautiful bride in ways that were clearly inappropriate, but I didn't realize the connection between what I had experienced at work that I was now coming home and taking it out on other people.
And that's our show for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Remember to live smart. I'm Patricia Gross. Have a peaceful week.